This is your friendly neighborhood host, JT Wheatley, back for another episode of the History of Comic Books podcast, this time with the life of Rube Goldberg, the Dean of Cartoonists. Many of us have heard the name Rube Goldberg when describing an overly complicated device or process that makes simple things hard. However, that name originally belonged to a cartoonist who not only invented such contraptions in his classic comic strips, but was a trailblazer in his medium, creating so many classic cartoons that one of the highest awards you could receive in the industry, the Reuben, is named after him. His name, of course, was Rube Goldberg, and he was the Dean of Cartoonists. Rube Goldberg was born on July 4th of 1883 in San Francisco, California, as Reuben Garrett Lucius Goldberg. His parents were middle-class Jewish immigrants Max and Hannah Conan Goldberg, and Reuben was the third of 7 children, with 3 of his siblings dying at a young age, and only his older brother Garrett, younger brother Walter, and younger sister Lillian surviving. At the age of 4, Rube Goldberg already showed an interest in art and was tracing cartoons from books. At 11, he even took classes for sign painting. Growing up, Reuben was quiet and shy, but hoped to become a cartoonist for a newspaper. His father, Max, who immigrated from Germany, though, was horrified his son wanted to be a cartoonist, believing it would lead him to becoming a beggar on the streets, though Max would eventually become his son's agent. Rube Goldberg's father was a San Francisco police and fire commissioner who encouraged his son to instead pursue engineering, believing in a more secure career. Ultimately, at the wishes of his father, Rube Goldberg went to the University of California, Berkeley to study engineering, though he did find time to provide cartoons for the school paper, The Pelican. He would graduate in 1904 and quickly got a job as an engineer with the City of San Francisco Department of Water and Sewers. However, despite a good salary and benefits, Goldberg hated it, from having to shovel tunnels or working with the city government, leading him to quit after just 6 months. Having attempted the normal route, he decided to pursue his dream of becoming a cartoonist. Rube Goldberg went to work for the San Francisco Chronicle, originally doing menial work such as emptying the trash and filing photos at $8 a week. In his spare time, he continued to draw and submit his work to the paper, but he was rejected at first. However, Goldberg's cartoons were slowly accepted over time, and sometimes he even got paid for them. Other times, he just got out of having to do any of the office tasks he hated. Finally, Goldberg was hired by the San Francisco Bulletin doing cartoons and columns in the sports department. His dream had been achieved until an unimaginable tragedy struck the city. On April 18, 1906, San Francisco was rocked by an earthquake that destroyed 80% of the city and leading to 3,000 deaths, the largest loss of life from a natural disaster in California history. While Goldberg and his family survived, his job at the San Francisco Bulletin was gone, as obviously more important matters needed to be attended to. With his prospects in the city gone, Rube Goldberg decided to start fresh and move to New York City, which he called the cartoon capital of the world. He left with only $200 and a diamond ring his father gave him to sell for his return trip home. He didn't need it, as after 12 days he was hired by the New York Evening Mail and became an instant success, covering and providing cartoons on everything from sports, politics, and everyday life. It helped that the New York Evening Mail was part of the McClure newspaper syndicate, the first American newspaper syndicate in history, allowing for his cartoons to be published nationally, and Goldberg had plenty of cartoons to provide them. From 1905 to 1913, Rube Goldberg created over 60 original cartoon series, including Foolish Questions, Mike and Ike, They Look Alike, about identical twins, and Bob McNutt, about a sweet-natured buffoon always trying to help. He even did a surprisingly serious soap opera series, Doc Wright, which ran for 10 months, beginning on January 29, 1933. With Foolish Questions, Rube Goldberg also invented a game by the same name in 1909 that ran up until 1934. Now, I've had some people ask me about this, so I'll take this opportunity to explain that the original term for cartoon was to describe a non-realistic illustration and later used to describe what we now call comic strips, though editorial cartoons obviously still retain the name. Thus, a cartoonist was someone like Rube Goldberg who drew them. When these drawings started to be animated in the early 20th century, the shorts were still retained the name of cartoon, though those that created them were called animators. Thus, this is why when I describe Rube Goldberg or other comic strip artists, I refer to them as cartoonists. With that tangent out of the way, back to Rube Goldberg himself. With Rube Goldberg's newfound success in New York, he started to enjoy himself. He bought his first car, a Minerva, in 1910, being one of the first in the city to own one, along with starting his lifelong love of vehicles. Goldberg could easily afford it too, as by 1915 he was making $25,000 a year, nearly $650,000 today, and being billed as America's most popular cartoonist. He was so popular, Goldberg was pursued by Arthur Brisbane of the William Randolph Hearst newspaper chain, first offering him $2,600 in 1911 and then $50,000 a year in 1915. However, the New York Evening Mail wasn't about to lose Goldberg, so they matched the offer and formed the Evening Mail Syndicate just to distribute his cartoons nationally. Rube Goldberg's personal life picked up as well. As of October 17, 1916, Rube Goldberg married Irma Sheeman, and they made their home on 98 Central Park West in New York City. The couple will have 2 sons, Thomas and George. That same year, Rube Goldberg created a series of 7 animated shorts, becoming an actual animator as mentioned before, telling humorous anecdotes about everyday life in the form of newsreels. Released from May 8th to July 31st, the shorts titled The Boob Weekly, Leap Year, The Fatal Pie, From Kitchen Mechanic to Movie Star, Nutty News, Home Sweet Home, and Losing Weight. However, it was in the comic strips that Rube Goldberg would cement his legacy in the strip that would bring him his lasting fame, that was The Inventions of Professor Lucifer Gorgonzola Butts, A.K., who made crazy inventions that were supposed to make life easier but only more complicated to process, whether putting holes in donuts or turning off the light. It was here that Goldberg finally put his engineering degree to work with his first invention strip, the simple mosquito exterminator, No Home Should Be Without It, appearing on July 17, 1912, and would run in Collier's Weekly beginning on January 26, 1929 to December 26, 1931. The idea behind this series was to question the logic of such machines and processes and how they make life more complicated. The character of Professor Butts was inspired by 2 professors that Goldberg studied under and found boring at the University of Berkeley. These strips would appear every 2 weeks till 1932, then the pace slowed until 1964, mainly because it took over 30 hours for Rube Goldberg to complete just one of them. Rube Goldberg soon became so popular that the words Goldbergian appeared in 1915, while Rube Goldberg appeared in 1928. They were references to his strips, first Foolish Questions in 1915 and then his invention strips, to describe his various contraptions and processes. In addition, from 1922 to 1934, Rube Goldberg's cartoons were distributed by the McNaught Syndicate. Rube Goldberg continued to find work outside of comic strip work, notably in 1930 when he wrote the film Soup to Nuts, which starred Ted Healy and a Curly Howard from the Three Stooges. In fact, it featured the film debut of the original Three Stooges, Shemp, Howard, Moe Howard, and Larry Fine, and even featured a cameo by Rube Goldberg himself opening letters in a restaurant. Also of note, the character of Old Man Smith is seen creating crazy inventions similar to what Rube Goldberg made in his strips. From 1938 to 1941, Rube Goldberg did 2 weekly strips for the Register and the Tribune Syndicate, Brad and Dad from 1939 to 1941, and Sideshow from 1938 to 1941. Also in 1938, he started work as an editorial cartoonist for the New York Sun. Rube Goldberg would be famous for saying, "You have to have courage to be a creator," and he would show several examples of this throughout his life. Goldberg chose to cover World War I firsthand and even traveled to Paris for 4 days after its start to observe it. However, he got into political trouble when he mocked FDR's New Deal in 1939, viewing it as a Rube Goldberg device in government form. This brought about death threats that resulted in him asking his sons, Tom and George, to change their last names during World War II to protect themselves. Tom changed his to George, which was unfortunate since his brother's first name was George. Despite this public fallout, Rube Goldberg's career continued to advance and even was called the Dean of Cartoonists around this time. He did work for the USO during World War II with his fellow cartoonists such as Milton Caniff, Ham Fisher, and Wally Bishop, entertaining the troops. After the war, they enjoyed their camaraderie so much they formed the National Cartoonist Society, NCS, with Rube Goldberg named its first president on March 1st, 1946. In 1967, the NCS's highest award was named after him, the Reuben, with such noted recipients being Will Eisner, Charles Schultz, and Gary Larson. Rube Goldberg didn't shy away from politics and even then benefited him at times, such as in 1948, which he received a Pulitzer Prize for cartooning with Peace Today, criticizing atomic power. In 1949, he moved his editorial cartooning from the New York Sun to the New York Journal-American, where he continued to 1963. That same year, the board game Mousetrap was invented under Hasbro, with the goal of the game for players to build a Rube Goldberg-type device to catch a mouse, and it remains in production to this day. In 1966, Rube Goldberg officially appeared as part of the Random House Dictionary of English Language, meaning to have a fantastically complicated improvised appearance, or to be deviously complicated or impractical. A few years before, the term Rube Goldberg was used in 1962 John Wayne's film Hatari, in which a character Pockets, played by Red Buttons, invents a machine to capture monkeys. That was, of course, quite Rube Goldberg in nature. In the end, Rube Goldberg would produce 50,000 cartoons, never retiring as he didn't believe in it. In fact, at the age of 80, he decided to become a sculptor. Finally, Rube Goldberg did die on December 7, 1970 at the age of 87, but his legacy continued to live on. In 1980, Rube Goldberg was posthumously given the National Cartoonist Society's Gold Key Award, their Hall of Fame recipient. Of course, his legacy continues in other ways as well, notably in 1949 when the Purdue University of Indiana fraternities Theta Thu and Triangle started an annual Rube Goldberg contest that lasted until 1956, in which they competed over who would complete a machine that accomplished a simple task in over 20 steps in under 75 while doing it under 2 minutes' time. In 1983, Theta Thu revived the competition for our Purdue students, and then in 1989 it became a national competition hosted by Purdue University, while the Theta Thu chapters across the nation held local ones. Each year the competition assigns a simple task from sharpening a pencil to most recently in 2020 turning off a light, and the winner usually gains national attention, with one evening appearing on Jimmy Kimmel Live. In 1995, the U.S. Post Office gave him the stamp honoring his Rube Goldberg Inventions cartoon, the Self-Operating Napkin. Of course, outside of cartooning, Rube Goldberg's influence remains throughout pop culture. His devices continue to inspire numerous moments in films and TV, from Home Alone to The Goonies, along with the most recent Saw horror films. As you can see, Rube Goldberg's legacy would reach far and wide, from films to cartoons to pop culture in general, where his very name has now become an adjective. However, us comic book and comic strip fans know he was originally one of ours and one of the greats, pioneering the medium of both art and business, blazing a trail for all that have followed. With this episode, I hope I have shed light on the literal man behind the name, as Rube Goldberg was truly the Dean of Cartoonists. I would like to thank the chief source of this episode, Just Like Goldberg, the incredible true story of the man behind the machines, written by Shara Arison and illustrated by Robert Neubecker, a children's book-style biography that gives a nice overview of the legendary cartoonist's life. A nice read for any comic strip fan. And now is December 31st, 2020, time for the favorite comic book of the week. Batman, Annual Number 5 by James Tynion IV and James Stokoe, which finds Clown Hunter getting his wounds nursed by Dr. Leslie Tompkins, who has a sit-down with the new vigilante and starts to reveal that apparently he and Batman are a lot more alike than either care to admit. This is a great origin issue to Clown Hunter that sees how he came about his vigilante ways, and Tynion IV does a great job showing that it was a very natural transition that he went through, while Stokoe's art is nicely gritty, a little bit cartoonish, and does a great job, especially with showing the wounds that both Clown Hunter inflicts and also endures as well. So all in all, a great origin to what's probably one of the better characters created in Batman comics in the last few years. So yeah, definitely pick that up. And with that, of course, it is New Year's Eve, so Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm going to go ahead and state right now that this will be the conclusion of Season 3, as my bank is officially spent again. It seems like these seasons get shorter and shorter every so often, but I think it's more like my research and so forth is trying to get more intense, I hope. I'm hoping these episodes are a little better. We'll see. And so forth. But yeah, I am hard at work on refilling that bank of new episodes. But we'll be launching next year with another run of the classics for you guys to start reading. And with that, I wish to have everyone a Happy New Year, and may 2021 bring you as many awesome comics as 2020 did.